Excellencies and ladies and gentlemen, the dispute over a body of water is not just about waters and rocks. It really is about the soul of our nation. It's about who we are as a Filipino and to what extent we can affirm, protect, and claim what is rightly ours and what is the patrimony of our people. This is what this is all about. And today we will hear it from two gentlemen who protected our interest in the International Tribunal so that the Philippine nation, the Filipino people, will prevail. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Malayan. Our lecturers this afternoon are instrumental in the country's decisive victory on our case before the tribunal in The Hague. And to formally introduce them, I would like to call on the Silliman University's Counsel General and Class Dean of the Silliman University College of Law, Attorney Miles Nicolas G. Behar.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Our lecturers this afternoon are two of the best legal minds in the country today. In our nation's history, they will forever be recognized as having led the Philippine legal team to success in the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea arbitration case with China in relation to the West Philippine Sea maritime disputes. It is therefore my distinct honor and privilege to introduce them to you today. Justice Francis H. Hardileza served as Solicitor General of the Republic of the Philippines from 2012 until his appointment as the 173rd Associate Justice of the Supreme Court on August 20, 2014. As Solicitor General, he successfully argued many cases before the Supreme Court, notably the constitutional challenges to the cybercrime law and the reproductive health law. More importantly, he served as agent for the Republic of the Philippines and head of the Philippine legal team for the Republic of the Philippines in the West Philippine Sea arbitration case with China before the Permanent Court of Arbitration at The Hague in the Netherlands. As agent of the Republic, he lectured extensively on the Philippines' claim here and abroad. He lectured at the Department of Foreign Affairs, the Philippine Navy Headquarters, the Council on Foreign Relations in New York, USA, the Center for a New American Security in Washington, D.C., Harvard University in Cambridge, Massachusetts, New York University in New York, and at the New York State Bar Association seasonal meeting in Hanoi, Vietnam. At the Office of the Solicitor General, he worked to improve the quality of representation by the OSG through capacity building programs for OSG lawyers and the recruitment of new lawyers from the top graduates of law schools, including bar top-notchers. Prior to his career in government, he had an extensive private law practice. He was a partner at the law firm of Angara, Abello, Concepcion, Regala, and Cruz, otherwise known as ACRA Law, where he had the distinction of being the only junior partner allowed to be a member of both the litigation and corporate departments. In 1986, he became chairman of the ACRA Law Litigation Department. In 1987, he left ACRA Law and founded the Hardileza, Sobreviñas, Diaz, Sayudini, and Bodigon law firm. In 1990, he established the Hardileza law offices as a solo practice. He later joined the Rocco, Bunyag, Kapunan, Migalios, and Hardileza law offices as partner, where he headed the litigation and labor law departments. In 1996, he became Senior Vice President and General Counsel of San Miguel Corporation, a position he held until June 30, 2010, when he was appointed by President Aquino as the Deputy Ombudsman for Luzon. Since 1993, Justice Hardileza has served as a professorial lecturer at the University of the Philippines College of Law, teaching constitutional and administrative law and civil procedure. He also served as examiner for political law in the 2012 bar examinations. Justice Hardileza has a distinguished academic record. He graduated class valedictorian in elementary and high school at Haro Elementary School and at the UP Iloilo College High School. He took his Bachelor of Arts major in political science from UP Iloilo College, where he was recognized as the most outstanding graduate in 1970. In 1974, he obtained his Bachelor of Laws from the UP College of Law in Diliman, graduating salutatorian and cum laude. In the same year, he placed third in the bar examinations with a general average of 88.35%. In 1997, he obtained his Master of Laws at the Harvard Law School, Cambridge, Massachusetts. He then trained as a foreign associate in the New York law firm of Sullivan & Cromwell, specializing in securities, litigation, and public offerings. Ladies and gentlemen, again, it is my honor and privilege to introduce to you the Honorable Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the Philippines, Francis H. Hardileza. Professor Florin T. Hilbay may be considered to be the most distinguished and prominent recruit of Justice Hardileza to the office of the Solicitor General. He placed number 1 in the 1999 bar examinations. After graduating from the University of the Philippines College of Law, he proceeded to Yale Law School in the United States to obtain his Master of Laws degree. He was a Fulbright visiting scholar at Boston College and has held fellowships at the Max Planck Institute for Comparative Public Law and International Law in Heidelberg, Germany, and the Asian Law Institute for Comparative Public Law in the National University of Singapore. Upon his return to the Philippines from his studies in the United States, he joined the faculty of the UP College of Law. In 2006, he served as a visiting lecturer on constitutional law here in Silliman University. Professor Hilbay has published articles on various legal issues, including constitutional theory, philosophy of adjudication, the institution of marriage, free speech, presidential immunity, and the problem of church and state. He also authored books on political law, namely Unplugging the Constitution, Handbook on Election Law, and a primer on impeachment. He was the editor-in-chief of the Philippine Law and Society Review and is currently an editor of the IBP Law Journal. Professor Hilbay joined the Office of the Solicitor General as an associate solicitor and then became a senior state solicitor. Along then Solicitor General Hardileza, he orally argued before the Supreme Court and won the case for the reproductive health law. On his own, he also argued orally before the court and won for the OSG the case of Corpus versus People before the Supreme Court en banc. He was also the principal handling lawyer for the DAP, PDAF, EDCA, and the Bangsamoro cases, among other cases of significant public importance. Upon the appointment of Justice Hardileza to the Supreme Court, Professor Hilbay was appointed as acting Solicitor General and subsequently as Solicitor General until the end of the term of office of former President Aquino III. He took over as agent for the Republic of the Philippines and as head of the Philippine legal team in our case against China on the West Philippine Sea before The Hague, at The Hague rather, in the Netherlands. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the former Solicitor General of the Republic of the Philippines, Professor Florin T. Hilbay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dean Miles, President Malayan, Dean Sheila, Executive Judge Pagio, students of law, university students, and all other students of Silliman University. Thank you for inviting Lorraine and me to talk before you today. We will talk about the handling of the case on the West Philippine Sea. We know you are a mixed audience, so we will try to be as brief and as simple as possible so that we can have time for a meaningful open forum. So, the title of our short talk is called How the Sea Was Won. We are referring to the arbitration on what sea? This is what we call the West Philippine Sea, or the larger name of it, the larger whole is the South China Sea. Can I have the next slide, please? This is the South China Sea. It is what we call a semi-enclosed sea. Enclosed by what? By around 6 countries. Why is it important? It is the second largest enclosed sea in the world. It is about 3 million square miles. Through the South China Sea, yearly pass around 5 trillion US dollars of trade. The fish that is harvested in the West Philippine Sea and the South China Sea is around 5 million tons a year. That's about 12% of the fish yield or fish harvest in the world. And it is said that there is oil and gas in the South China Sea. Now, what started, among others, or chiefly started the problems with the South China Sea? Can we have the next slide? It is China's so-called 9-dash line. Do you see the dashes? If you count them, there are 9. In 2009, China submitted to the United Nations a map to which was annexed a map showing this 9-dash line. And in legal language, they said that they have indisputable sovereignty over the islands and the seas in the South China Sea. So you will realize that the claim covers, from the picture itself, around 80% of the South China Sea. Now, why is the issue so important? And what is so wrong with China's claim? The claim has no basis in fact, it has no basis in law, and it has no basis in what we call UNCLOS, or the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. Now, when we say it has no basis in UNCLOS, what do we mean? What is UNCLOS? UNCLOS, again, is the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. It is a treaty. Can we have the first? Signed in 1982. To date, more than 126 countries have adhered or joined UNCLOS, including the European Union. The UNCLOS is touted as the so-called Constitution of the Seas. You see the second bullet? It's like a constitution for the seas. And why is it important? Because we know that the seas or the oceans cover more than 2/3 of our planet. As a constitution for the oceans, what does it mean? Just like what the Constitution, the Philippine Constitution means to us. So it governs 126 plus countries with respect to the oceans all over the world. Now, when we say now Constitution for the oceans, it means only for the oceans. That is why it is called a convention on the sea. The sea, the oceans, as distinguished from land. It governs the seas, it governs the oceans, it does not govern land. Now, later on we will explain to you, when you talk of land, you talk of territory, as in Philippine territory, as in, for example, part of the territory is Negros Oriental. When you talk of land, territory, you talk of sovereignty. The Philippines, we are sovereign. In the Philippines, we are sovereign in Negros Oriental, we are sovereign in Dumaguete. Now, the concept of UNCLOS as a constitution for the oceans is, again, not territory but seas. The sea, not land. So, when we talk of the seas under the UNCLOS, we talk not of sovereignty, but UNCLOS invented the term sovereign rights. You get it? Sovereign rights as distinguished from sovereignty. Sovereignty is about land, pertains to land. Sovereign rights pertains to the seas. Therefore, essentially, UNCLOS is a definition of what are the rights of countries to the seas. What are the sovereign rights? This is a new term, of countries to the seas. And what are the seas? Seas are generally bodies of water adjacent to land. And we have the next slide. Now, UNCLOS has what we call compulsory settlement of disputes, meaning the 126 countries that joined UNCLOS bound themselves that if they have problems, if they have disputes over, number one, the interpretation, or number two, the application of the provisions of UNCLOS, then they are bound to what we call compulsory dispute resolution. Now, the UNCLOS has around 322 articles. So you can imagine there can be any number of disputes over interpretation and application of the provisions of UNCLOS. Now, part though, the catch as they say, to the compulsory arbitration is UNCLOS gave the countries that adhere to UNCLOS a right to opt out or not be bound by the compulsory arbitration in three limited areas. The most important is what we call maritime delimitation. What is the meaning of maritime delimitation? You imagine Batanes, our northernmost islands, and you imagine Taiwan. They are very near each other, I think less than 80 nautical miles on each other. And therefore, when we have rights over the seas and the neighbor has rights over the seas, the principal way to resolve this is what is called maritime delimitation. In other words, you limit your rights. So that is one exception to compulsory arbitration. The other one is you can opt out on areas where it involve military actions or where the matter is pending before the United Nations. So in China, while it adhered to UNCLOS in 2006, opted out on these three matters. Our submission, of course, is that the claim we brought to arbitration in The Hague is not covered by the opt-out clause of China. And we have the next slide, please. We have the next slide. Okay, the slide before. Okay. Can you see the fourth bullet? No, we have said UNCLOS is a constitution. We have said if there is a dispute as to its interpretation or application, there is arbitration. And now we will tackle, so what are the rules? What are the rules that were provided for by UNCLOS? What were the rules which can give rise to possible disputes by the parties, members of UNCLOS? Remember, China and the Philippines are members of UNCLOS. So, the basic principle or the underlying rule laid down by UNCLOS is the principle of the land dominates the sea. If you look at or read the 322 articles of UNCLOS, you will not find the phrase land dominates the sea. But it is such an underlying principle permeating all of the UNCLOS that it is recognized to be the first principle of UNCLOS. The land dominates the sea. What does it mean? Basically, as I said, rights to the sea are measured from land. So UNCLOS governs rights to the sea, but before you can have rights to the sea, you have to have a certain amount of land. Can we have the next slide, please? Imagine Negros Oriental and imagine Dumaguete. I don't want to be technical, but slightly off the sea, and you're very near the sea. Under the baselines law, there's a special law, you have what we call baselines. From Dumaguete, therefore, you have a certain baseline, and then you measure 12 nautical miles, nautical, not kilometers, is what you call territorial sea. Okay? That is the first measure in UNCLOS. So, if you look at the bottom in blue, is the word sovereignty. Remember a while I said, with respect to territory, the Philippines is sovereign in Negros Oriental. The word used is sovereignty. We are sovereign in Negros Oriental, in Dumaguete. So imagine that that line from the baseline is Dumaguete. So you measure 12 nautical miles. Our rights are sovereignty, rights over territory. Now, look at the next measure. From the same baseline, which is, imagine just off the sea of Dumaguete, you measure 200 miles. Do you see 200 m? Okay. Now, UNCLOS gives a country like the Philippines rights to that 200 miles from the baseline. What do we call that? The exclusive economic zone. So now you know what EEZ means. Exclusive economic zone. UNCLOS gives a country that right. At the bottom, you see continental shelf. Pababa na yan. That is the seabed. That's below the water. The blue is the water. That's the water, the surface. The continental shelf now is the same length as the measurement of our exclusive economic zone. Now, you see the blue box at the bottom? It says sovereign rights. Sovereign rights, it doesn't say sovereignty. So what does UNCLOS give us? Sovereign rights meaning within exclusive economic zone, which is 200 miles from the baseline in Dumaguete, including the continental shelf. Our sovereign rights are to enjoy and exploit everything on the sea, fish, plums, the harvest of the sea, everything in the sea, and everything on the ocean floor or the continental shelf, meaning we can drill for oil and gas, minerals like manganese. So that is the meaning of continental shelf, EEZ, and 200 miles. That kind of right was given by UNCLOS for the first time to countries. Because UNCLOS for the first time defined rights over the sea as a matter of treaty binding on all countries that adhered to it. Now, beyond, you see some more sea, and then outer shelf. Do you see that outer shelf? It's the outer continental shelf. Under certain conditions, a country, for example, like the Philippines, you can make a claim with the United Nations Authority for an extended continental shelf. If granted, what do we get? Again, sovereign rights to the fish, to the bounty of the sea, and to the minerals and oil and gas, if any, on the floor. Beyond that is called the area. The area is off limits in the sense that the area belongs to mankind. You will be allowed to drill in the area upon application and approval with a special UN authority. So, now, this is the rule laid down by UNCLOS. The land dominates the sea. So now you know we have rights, provided we have land. And if our land has adjacent sea, we have rights. 12 nautical miles territorial sea, 200 nautical miles economic zone. Now, but you know, we have kept it simple. I kept referring to Negros Oriental as land. And of course, nobody disputes that Negros Oriental is land, just like Luzon. But we all know that beyond the seas, there will be islands, there will be small islands, there will be reefs. The most famous of which is your Apo Reef. And the question arises, so perhaps you need a more detailed, a more specific definition of what is land. Because there are features, there are areas in the sea of Dumaguete that are not as large as Dumaguete. For example, Apo Reef, does that generate 200 nautical miles? So, UNCLOS went a step further. It defined the meaning now of land. This brings us to the next slide. So, the principle is, yes, the land dominates the sea. Without land, you have no rights to the sea. If you have land undisputed, like Negros Oriental, you measure 12 nautical miles, you measure 200 nautical miles. It's because Negros Oriental qualifies as one of the three types of features under UNCLOS. Under UNCLOS, they now refine the meaning of land. By the article they call it the regime of islands. Regime, the rule governing islands. And there are three types of features. We have stopped using the word island now. We know that island is a technical definition. That is why you see type of feature. It doesn't say type of islands. Because there are three types of features. Anything you find in the South China Sea under UNCLOS can fall only under 1, 2, 3. The first one is island. And can you read the description? Can you see it? Naturally formed aerial land surrounded by water above water at high tide. Doon pumapasok ang definition of Negros Oriental. Do you follow? Naturally formed area of water. This area was not reclaimed. It is surrounded by water. I think that's the Visayan Sea. And it is above water at high tide. So, there is no question Negros Oriental is an island. No. If it is an island, what does UNCLOS say? You are entitled to, remember territorial sea, you are entitled to 12 nautical miles of territorial sea, and you are entitled to 200 nautical miles of EEZ. Okay, so that goes for an island. Now, second type of feature, President Malayang mentioned rocks. Rocks, as in bato. Now, rocks or bato has a defined meaning, as a technical meaning under UNCLOS. What is a rock? These are reefs, mainly below water. So imagine Apo Reef, mainly below water, but have rocky promontories. The meaning of rocky promontories may, in Tagalog, may umuusbong. Some part of the rock shows itself above water that are visible at high tide. So even at high tide, you can see the promontory. Okay. Does that make them an island? It is a rock if that protrusion, imagine Apo Reef, if there's a protrusion, if it cannot, and these are the sacramental words, that's why I had it underlined. If that promontory cannot sustain human habitation or economic life of its own, it is merely a rock, it is not an island. So again, if it doesn't meet this test, cannot sustain human habitation or economic life of its own, even if it is a protrusion, even if it's visible at high tide, it is only a rock, not an island. And why is the distinction important? Because a rock has less rights than an island. And you see in the table, a rock is entitled only to a 12 nautical mile territorial sea, but it is not, repeat, it is not entitled to any EEZ of 200 miles. So you see now the distinction between the rights given to an island and a mere rock. And then the third category, a so-called low tide elevation. You cannot even see it at high tide. This will include submerged reefs and artificial islands. Now, I am not a diver, I'm sorry, so I'm not familiar with Apo Reef, on whether it is visible, or there are parts of it visible at high tide. But a low tide elevation is not visible at all. It is only visible if you are up in the air, you will see the reef encircling, for example, Apo Reef. Now, if it is a reef, what are its rights under UNCLOS? Nothing. No EEZ, no territorial sea. So now, in very simplistic terms, yan po is what UNCLOS has laid down as the rule. The land dominates the sea. If you have land and you have an adjacent sea, you are entitled to certain rights, but it depends on what kind of feature are you. If you are land, if it is land, you have full rights. If it is rock, only territorial sea. If low tide elevation, no rights. So the UNCLOS as a constitution, and I'm sure even the high school students are reading the constitution, puts that in black and white. So parang sinabi, ito na yung rules about rights to the sea. Okay? So, therefore, remember the 9-line? Remember the 9-line? Under these rules, China can have 200 nautical miles of EEZ only from its nearest island, which qualifies as an island, a #1 island under the regime. Now, so, do you see Hainan? Hainan. Hainan is the southernmost island from the China mainland. So, if you measure according to the rules of UNCLOS 200 miles, it will look like this. Can we have the next? Do you see that? The red shows that's the outermost perimeter of the 200 miles of China. But see why we oppose the 9-line. You look at the dashes. The dashes are almost 25 miles of Palawan and almost like 25 miles, 50 miles of Zambales. So clearly, if you just use ordinary intelligence, it is, as they say, a no-brainer that the claim of China has no basis under UNCLOS. Of course, China claims that they have a right to the 9-line because since time immemorial, they have owned the islands in the South China Sea, and since time immemorial, they have fished the seas of the South China Sea. So, in this, for example, you will see why clearly our own claim to Scarborough is valid under UNCLOS. Scarborough Shoal is only 125 miles from Zambales. So, as they say in Tagalog, pasok sa 200 nautical miles. Scarborough is within our EEZ. Now, Scarborough is more than 500 nautical miles, again, away from Hainan. Therefore, again, you don't have to be a math wizard. The entitlement is only up to 200 miles. And this is why you have a dispute in the South China Sea. Now, essentially, there are three parts of the South China Sea which have generated disputes. First, the paracels. We will not take it up. The paracels is the one nearest to Vietnam and China. We have no claim to it. Now, the second group is a group of one, Scarborough Shoal, to which we claim territorial rights and that it is within our EEZ. So, again, you see, these are all affected by the 9-line. The most important, or the area of largest dispute, is the Spratly Islands. Can you see the one in the bottom? The Spratly Islands. Why is it the area with the most number of disputes? Okay. Because the Spratlys has more than 750 reefs. So it's like, to oversimplify, there are 750 Apo reefs in the Spratlys reefs. Of those reefs, there are more than 40 that are above water at some of the time. There are about 20 that are above water all the time. So meaning 20 have promontories, this is visible all of the time. Now, but does it follow that if there is a promontory, therefore it is an island? We now learn, no. It has to depend on whether it is naturally formed, remember? And it will depend, among others, whether it can sustain economic life on its own or can sustain human habitation. So the problem is, so many countries have occupied these features. We were in Scarborough Shoal or Panaka. We are in at least 6 in Nas Bradley. Vietnam is around 7, China has around 8, and many other countries. So now, it's what in Tagalog you say, naglabo-labo na. People went there, occupy features. Some of them are reefs. Di walang umuusbong. What do? They just occupy it. Some of them have natural water. For example, our Pag-asa. The question is, can it sustain human habitation or economic life? So, you have all of these features, but the outstanding question is, who will decide what are the features? Because depending on what are the features, you can understand what are the rights under UNCLOS. So that is the situation in the South China Sea. You have claimants, cross-claimants, claimants to the same feature, all saying, I was there first, and then how much rights, how much EEC do they generate? So, sa Tagalog, masalimuot ang situation sa South China Sea. The challenge was, you know what are the facts? Are they islands? And you know what is the law? You have the regime of islands. Paano mo ibangga na because of the facts fall under the law, therefore, I am entitled to so much rights, whether 12 nautical miles or 200 EEC. And we have the next slide. And so, to make a long story short, how did it happen that we have a case? Because in 2011, China, after the 9-9 plane, started to harass our vessels trying to explore oil in the Reed Bank. The Reed Bank is a low tide elevation of Palawan, which is said to be rich in oil and gas. Now, Scarborough Shoal, I don't have to repeat, sometime in April of 2012, there was the standoff in Scarborough Shoal. Our fishermen used to be able to enter the shoal. After a while, the Chinese positioned their vessels at the mouth and prevented our fishermen from fishing. Did it mean that we have not been engaging China all these years? No. For 17 years, starting 1995. Why 1995? In 1995, China took possession, or seized possession of Mischief Reef, which is within our 200-mile economic zone. We protested it at that time, 1995. They said, no, we are just using the installation. It started with bamboo as a safe haven for their fishermen during storms. So, since 1995, we have been engaging China in a dialogue, negotiation, bilateral, exchange of views. The anecdote I always tell is when we were about to sue, the first time I went to Washington, D.C., I brought 2 big suitcases, yung laman nun parang balikbayan box, containing the history, the written proof of our 17 years of exchange with China. Now, again, go back to, we have certain areas within our 200 miles. China is there, we are in some. So, what were the possible submissions that we can have? And we have the next slide, please. If you apply now UNCLOS, given the situation, given Reed Bank, given Scarborough Shoal, what could we do? First, we say, and now you understand more, the 9-line has no basis. Why? Historic rights. UNCLOS does not mention or provide for historic rights. What UNCLOS provides for is measurement depending on what type of feature is adjacent to the sea. Number two, we made a claim that the features, for example, Scarborough Shoal, are not entitled to 12 nautical miles. So we were saying anything in the disputed area cannot generate 200 nautical miles. Remember, go back to Hainan. Hainan, make a mental picture, can only have 200 miles. It is so far from Scarborough Shoal, it is so far from Palawan. And number three, the actions of China in the South China Sea violated our sovereign rights. Fishing, we have a right to fish in Scarborough Shoal. Why? It is because it is within our EEZ. And they did installations, run reclamations in Mischief Reef. Mischief Reef is within our 200 miles economic zone. These harm the environment. Now, I'll just show you a slides, and Doreen will have his own slides later on. For example, you see at the bottom left, Scarborough Shoal. It has around 5 protrusions, that is one of them. And this is my favorite illustration, especially for the laymen, or maybe the high school students. If, I said to the millennials, mag-date kayo ng boyfriend mo o girlfriend mo, dyan, sa Scarborough Shoal, pahatid kayo sa speedboat. Bibawon kayong tubig, good for 1 week. Crackers, good for 1 week. Wine or beer, good for 1 week. After 1 week, do you think you will survive? So, that is a feature. Can it sustain human habitation? Can it sustain economic life of its own? Meaning economic life of its own. You have economic life, livelihood. E paano ka mag-livelihood? Gumamatay ka na. So, Scarborough is a good example of the meaning of a rock because it cannot sustain human habitation on its own. Meaning, wag naman na you will be replenished with provision by helicopter every other day. The term is on its own. If you cannot do that, then it is merely a rock. You see, for example, Subi Reef. That's the top view. A reef is completely submerged. But this picture now, meron ng reclamation. But it's like, almost like, I think, Apo Reef. If it's completely submerged, it has no rights. So even if China is there, it does not generate even a 12 nautical mile territorial sea. So, Quarteron Reef is a reef, Ferry Cross is a reef, Mabini Reef. Now, at the bottom is our Ayungin Shoal. That's a top view. What is on top of Ayungin Shoal? Yun ang landing craft, old one, that binara natin. And it is a sad story because we are a poor country. We occupied it, yung luman na barge, we grounded it on Ayungin Shoal because we have no resources to reclaim, not that we will do it in the first place because to reclaim it will harm the environment. So I use this as illustrations about what types of features there are. So, can we have the next slide, please? So what did the Philippines seek to achieve? You see the small dots in green. Yun lang in the first instance when we filed a claim. We filed a claim only over 8 small features. What did we want to achieve? Number 1, to say there is no basis to deny gas line. Number 2, we are entitled to the full 200 EEZ from our baselines. We wanted a declaration on, so what are the status of the islands. Remember the 8 that we brought up? Are they rocks? Because four of these small features are occupied by China. So we said we can bring a case to the Wallis Enclave, assuming for the sake of argument that China is there. At most, they will have a claim only to 12 nautical miles. And we wanted also a claim that there was a violation of our sovereign rights by their preventing our fishermen from fishing in Scarborough Salt Shoal. Now, can we have the next slide, please? Why did we not include in our claim all of the features? Because there are more than 100 features in the South China Sea. First, of course, it was going to be impractical. We did not have the resources to do studies on everything. But we can share with you now. An important reason is, do you see 3 red names? It's one is Lawak, one is Pag-asa, the third is Ito Aba. Okay? Ito Aba and Pag-asa are just off our 200 miles. But if Ito Aba was declared what I will call a full-fledged island with a 200 nautical miles, do you see the circumference? Its EEC will hit Palawan. And this is among the reasons why we did not include Ito Aba as part of our complaint. As a undersecretary, now a member, a justice of the Sandigan Bayan, member of the political team and the legal team from Malacanang said, do you imagine if we brought a suit on Ito Aba and we lost? The next morning, the warship or the aircraft carrier of China will park next to Palawan saying that, the arbitral tribunal said Ito Aba is a full-fledged island, it has 200 miles, and therefore its 200 EEC runs smack into Palawan. So, was the case an easy one to bring? Can we have the next slide, please? Of course, not. And on the shoulders of the President fell the difficult obligation and duty to decide to file or not to file. The most important problem was one of jurisdiction. Remember, China had an opt-out clause. So, were we falling under the opt-out clause? Jurisdiction means, will the tribunal hear it in the first place? Or they can throw it out. Our consultant from Yale told us that chances of it being thrown out was more than 50%. Why? Beyond the legal reasons, we were going up against China, a big country. So they tell us, why will a tribunal? Bakit naman papansinin ng Pilipinas, kalit-lit kayo? Why will they issue a tribunal, a ruling that will humiliate China? So that was the argument that our case could have been thrown out. On the other hand, the American lawyers were arguing, this type of case has never been brought before. No case has been brought before to clarify all of these questions about the sea, about how many rights. And therefore, if you constitute a tribunal composed of 5 wise men will not pass up the opportunity to make a landmark decision. And the landmark decision will be brought by the Philippines. What they did not answer, of course, is, will we win? So you're back to the question. What if it is thrown out? The President asked me, give me the odds. And I said, sir, when you practice law, especially when you go to trial, you cannot give odds. You cannot say, we will win 100%. So he was not pleased because the decision had to fall on his shoulders. Also, remember, there are multiple claimants, especially to some of the areas we are in. Vietnam, there's a principle that you cannot have a suit if a what is called a necessary third party, like Vietnam, does not join us in the suit. Enforcement. You will hear this now. Now that we got an award, we cannot enforce. I assure you, my countrymen, nag-isipan na itong problema even before we filed the suit. Unlike the Philippine Constitution, where we have the military and we have the police force, if you lose a case in court, you have a sheriff. The sheriff will make sure, so wag kayong utang ng pera na hindi nagbabayad, because if you are brought to court and you cannot pay and the judge says you have to pay and you refuse to pay, the sheriff will make sure you pay by either going to your bank or selling your property. In international law, there is no international policeman, there is no international sheriff. So, one of the questions asked then of me when I was going around in New York is, so knowing that there is no international policeman, why are you still fighting the suit? Are you gunning for a moral victory? And my answer was, no, we are gunning for a legal victory. What if China does not comply? Well, we will have law on our side, we will have public opinion on our side, and in time's measure, we hope that China will abide as a good citizen of the world. And then, of course, there are the practical problems. You file for arbitration against China, and it displeases China, what happens to our trade? They might refuse our bananas, send them back, or they might send back our OMWs. So, this was a tough call for the president. And he had, of course, some support. Can we have the next slide, please? I'll just go very quickly. This is the Philippine legal team from this, the lawyers from these departments of government. And we had support from NAMRIA, which does our maps, from the Philippine Navy, especially the Bureau of Aquatic Fisheries and Aquatic Resources on the evidence we had. Now, next slide, please. Florin and I have the honor to be named as the agent to the litigation. That is, agent to the arbitration. What are the duties of the agent? And Florin will expound on this. He is essentially a litigation manager. He manages the litigation. And my view is he has to be an honest broker. What is the meaning of honest broker? He brings the views of the different participants to the principal, honestly. Who is the principal? The president. So that the president can make his decision given all the facts, given all the correct facts. So, part of my duties, selection of pre-litigation consultative group. We had one, we had of course the late Florentino Feliciano, who is an expert in international law, the Professor Wiseman from Yale, Professor Oxman from the University of Florida. We had to select international counsel. Why? This was the first time we were doing a litigation of this magnitude. We had no experience, and we have to choose international counsel. What did I do to choose international counsel? We did what we call a beauty contest. A beauty contest is like a beauty contest. We looked at possible contestants. We paired out the names. We went down to 2, and then we said, "Oh, submit kayo. What are your submissions?" We paid for them. We heard them when they gave us their views. And most important, submit kayo ng bids nyo. How much will it cost? And to make a long story short, we chose the law firm of Foley and Howard because they were superior in terms of arguments, presentation, and the billing. This is in US dollars. We cannot share with you how much, but it's very expensive. To give you an idea, you know how much these American lawyers cost? 1 hour of these American lawyers can buy you more than two bags. Two important. Or it can, 1 hour can buy you 1 Gucci bag. Ganon kamahal. So, we had the law firm, we had to formulate the theory, and in the end, again, as I said, it was such an honor to be the agent. Why? And Florin will explain to you. Ultimately, I signed the submission. So nakakwadro yung pinirmahan ko. So that mapagmalaki ko naman sa mga apo ko na ako yung pumirma ng submission or complaint to the tribunal. So tago-tago ko yun, yung pirma ko. Now, very briefly, this is what happened. The arbitration proceedings was, can we have the next slide, please? The tribunal was constituted, 5 members. We submitted memorials to the judge. It's just it's a fancy name for a memorandum. March 30, I was privileged again to sign it. But by August 21, I moved up to the Supreme Court, and Florin more than ably took over as Solgen and as agent. He will explain to you there were hearings of jurisdiction and merits, and there were further submissions. So we filed, we did the process, and then on July 12 of this year, we got an award which by all measures is a sweeping and stunning award beyond my wildest dreams, beyond the wildest expectations of Florin. Can we have the next slide, please? Just to make it very short, the award, the tribunal said there is no basis to the 9-dash line. Remember, their claim is based on historic rights. The tribunal said, no, UNCLOS, there are no historic rights against UNCLOS. You measure rights based on whether you have sea adjacent to land. Number 2, we won almost all of our arguments that the features we brought for arbitration are merely rocks. Again, the significance of rocks, at most, they generate only 12 nautical miles. So even assuming that China is in one of them or in many of them, for example, Mischief Reef, it does not disturb our EEZ of 200. And equally stunning, the Chinese actions in the South China Sea violated our sovereign rights to fishing, for example, and harmed the marine environment. For the law students who want to read, the high school students are here. Yes, how many pages is the decision? Yung high school mo na. Siguro, they are like, it's more than 500 pages. But you can download it if you want to read it. Now, I have a slide. The next slide, please. So, on the left, this was our claim. Remember, we had a claim only to 8, later on plus 1 feature. Sometime in November, December of 2014, the tribunal said, you, Philippines, discuss and cover almost all, more than 50 additional features. So while we started only with 8, on the right hand, you see, the tribunal ruled on all of the features. And what's important, all of them at most are rocks. Meaning, so you see all of the white space, the pink is our EEZ, 200 miles from our baseline. So even if China, even if Vietnam is in a rock, they are limited to 12 nautical miles. Now, if it is a reef, there is even no territorial sea. So this is why this was such a big win for us. Now, remember we were so apprehensive about Ito Aba. Can we have the next slide, please? On the right-hand side, if we had lost on Ito Aba, then the 200 miles would have reached almost Palawan. And fortunately for us, on the left-hand side, Ito Aba is outside our 200 miles, but Ito Aba expressly was also ruled as a rock, not an island. I just have one more on the Tribunal Award. Can we have the next slide, please? Very important to our fishermen in Scarborough Shoal. Scarborough Shoal was declared a rock. So it means whoever has possession or control, and for the moment it's China, but we're disputing it, it only has 10 nautical miles of territorial sea. But the tribunal gave fishermen of 4 countries, fishermen of the Philippines, China, including Taiwan and Vietnam, what is called traditional fishing rights in Scarborough Shoal. So our fishermen, by law, as a result of the Tribunal Award, by law, have a right to traditional fishing. But traditional fishing was defined to be what you call artisanal fishing. And to the millennials, that's your favorite word, no? Artisanal coffee, artisanal ice cream. Artisanal fishing means subsistence small-scale fishing. So we can fish provided it's the small fishermen. It's a human right. And lastly, land reclamation, as I said, has been declared to be illegal and has caused irreparable injury to the ecosystem in the environment. And now for my last slide. So, what have we achieved? And that's why we say, probably, arguably, the biggest legacy of President Benigno Aquino III is initiating arbitration. And mabuti na lang nanalo tayo. And because we won and we won big, he is giving to the next president a sound and a strong legal platform to negotiate with the Chinese. So, in my book and in the book of Florin, we are very proud to observe President Aquino, who made the decision. Remember, the decision was not easy. The case could have gone either way. With the help of divine providence, with the help of many people, we won. Buti na lang, we won and we won big. So, the next legacy, we hope, will fall on President Duterte. He has the foundation for a strong negotiation position. We pray that his hand will be guided on how to negotiate with the Chinese. He is our leader, so we would leave to him how to do it. The tribunal's decision is there for him to use now or sometime in the future. And I leave you with a favorite quote I have from my favorite American president. Let us never fear to negotiate, and let us never negotiate our fear, out of fear. With this big win, we believe that our negotiators will be negotiating from strength. Maraming salamat.
Thank Justice Ardelesa for that lecture. I'm sure that our law students are very inspired to study international law more so that they will earn 2 Gucci bags per hour in the future. But before we continue with the second lecture, we shall be serenaded by one of the talents of this Silliman University College of Law. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Fatima Lachin. A big applause.